Patch 11.1 is creeping up fast, but how fast? We're also taking a look at some delve changes as well as new hints of what player housing's gonna be like. Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly, the thing you watch while waiting for that really long queue. You can help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catch me live where I'm streaming. Earlier in the week, I posted a video speculating the release dates of everything, including the upcoming patch, which I said would likely release the week of February 25th. It's worth pointing out, of course I could be wrong, and I want to briefly cover that. As we've learned by now, most of WoW's patches have been separated into these 8-week blocks, give or take, because of, small delays or holiday or weather or whatever, but there's a possibility at least the 11.1 patch could drop as soon as February 11th, which would fit the 8-week gap. I've mostly been a skeptic on that though, because Plunderstorm and Turbulent Timeways, that's still happening, and WoW tends to not allow those sorts of overlaps. And when we think about it, it also means the patch is coming in only, less than 3 weeks. That's pretty close. Even with raid testing concluding this coming weekend, we're, again, it's too soon, right? On the other hand, February 18th is a close but also more reasonable launch date. Even if Turbulent Timeways is still happening, it can still award Season 1 gear, which is no big deal as long as that's clearly communicated. In any case, the patch is coming up pretty soon, and I'm going to go over a what to do and not do sort of guide on Monday, so stay tuned. Let's go through the PTR and highlight some important bits we've found, as well as other changes that might have been overlooked. First, let's talk about crests, not the gilded ones, that's for another day of course, but crests in general. There's been a lot of criticism over how confusing crests can be even 2 years later when the system was first introduced in Dragonflight patch 10.1. A while back, the team talked about the clarity and intuitiveness as something they want to work on, and so in 11.1, they're doing almost exactly what I predicted they'd do. So take a look. In the currency tab, they made a specific category for Season 2 specific currencies, namely crests and valor stones. All 4 crests are shown here, not in alphabetical order like it is now in the live game, but in their proper order from the top down, which helps to clarify how the terms used describe the stages of production or manufacturing. So we see, weathered, carved, runed, and gilded. So at a glance, our progression is displayed very clearly, as opposed to, the old version where we dart our eyes up and then down and then up again to see where we're looking. Also, the tooltips for these crests are even more detailed, with the list of activities and locations where these crests can be found, and the item level range they exist in. The idea is to have every question answered in this window. So yeah, it's not what everyone was hoping for. A lot of folks would prefer a return to farming dozens of 2s to upgrade their gear to Mythic, but I see this as a very nice win to help both veteran players and newer players wondering what the heck to do with all these crest things. Before we continue, let's thank the sponsor of today's video, Into the AM. They've been popular with you folks, so they're back again to get me talking about some of my favorite kinds of shirts. Very plain shirts, no design, not even branding. Into the AM is featuring their basics collection for everyday wear with, no statement, no logo, just simple comfort and versatility. Their polycotton blends come fitted, there's long and short sleeve versions, there's a thicker work shirt version, tons of colors, and of course you might be able to catch a sale. The whole site is up to 50% off, including the basics collection, but the sale ends soon. So if you're looking to do a bit of a refresh, you can pick up one shirt, or hey, get a pack for deeper discounts and customize your colors. Check the link below or type intotheam.com/soul10 for another 10% off your purchase. Of course, don't do it to help the channel, do it because you see a great deal. Profession specializations are in, and here's how they work. Just outside the Artisans Consortium in Dornogle is the respec person. Follow the prompts and confirm you want to do a one-time respec of your war within profession, after which you receive all the knowledge you've ever received and unlearn whatever recipes associated with them. Obviously, this is great for the folks who made big mistakes in how they spec'd early on, and now they can aim for the spec they actually want, or I guess what seems to be the most profitable at the moment. Buyer beware though, there might be a lot of people who feel the same way, and now you'll be locked in with a lot of competition. And some might feel like this is one of of those, too little, too late situations, because after making a bad call, they've long given up on professions, so they don't even have a lot of points to refund anyway. What I do wonder, now that they're setting this precedent, what are they going to do in the future? Is this going to be a one-time, a forever kind of thing? Is it going to be a once per season, once per expansion? And maybe more important, what are they going to do in the next expansion? Will this one-time respec be in at the start, or will they hold off on it for until the second season? It's covering the worst case scenarios for a lot of folks, but I'm kind of mixed. If the respec exists at the start of midnight, I don't think that's going to help anyone except for the really pro goblins who are going to use this respec as just part of their business plan. They're going to spec one way for the purpose of maximizing profits and knowledge points, and then they'll switch to this long-term spec for the duration of the expansion. I imagine people who mess up early and respec in those first couple of weeks, not to insult them, but they have a fair likelihood of messing up again, and then, oh no, now there's no fix, they used it early on. That's why within this conversation of respecs, I've suggested something like being able to subtract a few points of our choosing, and then we can apply it elsewhere, just a few at a time. So it's not unlike adjusting our talent trees, but it has a cooldown. We can only do this every few weeks. And all of a sudden, I'm reminded of Conduit Energy, which was a terrible, terrible mechanic from a gameplay standpoint during Shadowlands, but I feel like something like that could work a little bit better for professions going forward. Anyway, having these smaller kinds of respecs, this way players can have their mulligan, they can have an opportunity to fix their misclicks or to slowly pivot away from an undesired build, as opposed to being able to be one kind of alchemist one day and then going in a totally different direction altogether. What I still find very odd is the lack of anything new coming in the patch outside of this very bare minimum, as in, hey, there's going to be a new Vantis rune for the raid and a contract for the new renown, whoop-de-doo. But as is, this doesn't feel like the right play, as there's virtually nothing for crafters and gatherers to feel excited about going into this patch. There's no new planning or market speculation, the gathering methods, that's not going to change. We could have had a goblin-themed Blingtron, or a traditional mount modeled after a car, or mechanical weapons and armor with steampunk and goblin cantrip effects. We could have had new resources to gather specific to Undermine, although that probably would have been toxic waste. And the feedback I'm giving is just a reaction to the current state of the PTR, but as said earlier, we're getting pretty close to launch. With the respec, as a crafter, I want to feel more excited about the patch, but with this lack of new things to gather and make, I'm feeling a little bit empty. But now let's move over to our second favorite thing in the world, delves. They're much more testable with this new build, giving us an opportunity to play with new curios, but I want to highlight updates to some of the delves' more unique mechanics. Let's start with spore bits found in Fungal Folly and Mycomancer Cavern. We know these as the floating spore plant things that when we get into range or if we attack them, they aggro on us and then eventually explode for big damage to both us and the enemy. In 11.1, spore bits are no longer targetable, nor do they aggro. What happens is that when we get close, they start to arm, but they don't aggro, they don't move, so we can leave range and they'll just calm down. If we stay in its range, they'll eventually start that animation sequence to explode, and we definitely ought to run out. And not all spore bits move, so it's going to be a lot easier to avoid accidentally activating one and then causing lots of chaos from running around. The drawback here is folks can no longer try and gather up a bunch of mobs and spore bits in an effort to nuke them multiple times for massive damage or even instant kills. As for the explosion, it deals damage and now places a heavy damage over time on us if we're hit. Although oddly enough, when enemies are hit, they're knocked back, but whatever damage they take is instantly reversed. I'd like to think that's a bug, and when this patch goes live, we'll still be able to at least strategically use spore bits to damage mobs or knock them back. If not though, this is going to be a huge nerf, and spore bits will be nothing but an obstacle for us to avoid, which is, I don't know, my opinion, it's kind of a shame. The Kobold style delves with the candle or the air totem, those changed a lot too. The candle slash totem, it no longer gets smaller or doesn't lose charges the more you move. Instead, you start with a small inventory and then you just drop the candles or the totems to, access portions of the room, or you make them breathable, you'll be able to see stuff, that sort of thing. And then you pick them up when you're done and move on. In a sense, the gameplay of these delve types has been simplified to avoid those, oh no, I'm out of charges kinds of scenarios. And in delves with webs to navigate through via grappling hook, now we have the option, we can instead strike this egg that temporarily removes the webs. I couldn't find every change between the different stories, but it's looking to me they're kind of sanding away some of the delve specific features, and I don't know, in a way, if the feedback from Season 1 is telling Blizzard to make some of these things less annoying, hey, cool, okay, they should act on it, but I don't know, to me it feels like a pretty big nerf, trivializing these simple obstacles to be even more simple. And of course, we've got to talk about my favorite thing, player housing. The good folks over at Wowhead found some new information in the most unlikely of places, the Cataclysm Classic PTR. Now, why it's there is not entirely clear. Some commenters have pointed out information like this sort of data is shared across all WoW clients, but that sort of stuff is over my head. I'll just kind of take their word for it. But the point is, we have something. Yes, I am that desperate for information. I'll take almost literal crumbs and turn it into feel-good content. But you know what? What I'm seeing has me feeling pretty good. Wowhead went through the code and pointed out the interesting text for us to look at, and here's what we learned. Housing items can be interior or exterior, indicating we'll have something closer to the traditional house and outdoor yard as opposed to, say, like a 50-story apartment building we're all crammed into. The theme of none, folk, rugged, generic, and opulent are probably early placeholder names to categorize housing items. Under the housing exterior, if there are component size options including this any option, this gives a vibe that I can simply choose what I want and place it down, as opposed to walking up to a fixed slot or a grid location and then choose between items that might be restricted by size depending on said location. So in other words, we might be looking at free placement of items and furniture. One phrase that I thought stood out: locked by other player. I wonder if it's possible for other players to come visit and maybe help edit the house with the owner's permission. Like, remember, these are interface strings, so I don't think this error code would be the result of a player trying to enter a door the owner decided to lock. Like, this is less about how we interact with furniture and items, more about like the edit mode side of player housing. And then there are these other lines: room not found and house not found. Why is there a distinction between the house and an individual room? Could it be that houses can be quite large and maybe they'll have these separate instance rooms, like you click on a door and then you warp in as opposed to walking in? That could be a possibility. Now, under components, they identify more specific items like narrow and large doors, a wall, floor, ceiling, stairs, and a pillar. Also notice this thing called base room. This part's kind of vague. It doesn't clearly indicate if we can literally place walls, floors, and stairs wherever we want, just that we'll be able to select the wall and then change the properties of that, or the ceiling, change that, and floor, stairs, and so on. But there are other strings that include a decor edit mode and a layout edit mode. So decor for like the furniture, the wall hangings, and all that stuff, but layout could be for the floors, the walls, and the stairs, like as in the shape and the layout. That could be a possibility. So what I'm seeing here are the trappings of a very customizable house where we might, big emphasis, might set up hallways or walls to create something kind of like a living room or a dining room and so on. It's more likely though that homes, especially large ones if they have those, are going to have some fixed layouts or like prefabricated templates. But for example, I might be able to choose to have one or two staircases that lead upstairs, but I can choose between the two pre-assigned locations, or if I just want one staircase or none for some strange reason. I'm really excited over creating these separate instance rooms behind the door, so let me explain. Like maybe we'll have the main house and a blank slate where we can add stuff and shape it, but then we can add a door when we click on it and it phases us to this separate room that can be further customized to be our bedroom or someone else's bedroom, a trophy room, a sex dungeon, whatever. I think this is the easiest way to do multiple rooms, even if the doors, even if coincidentally they might happen to be like right next to each other, they'll still phase us into full-sized rooms. I just don't think that we should be too strict about nailing one-to-one proportions of the house. But I'm going to stop there because in the end, for all we know, this is all garbage code, never meant to be used for much of anything. It just happened to slip into some classic era build. But seeing even a hint of the direction they want to go, Oh, that's got me super excited. In a shot like this, there could be a nearby staircase leading to this guy's real room, which is a bed surrounded by a bunch of mannequins in sexy transmog, who knows. It's hard to not feel super hyped over these new possibilities, like how large can a house get? Can it be repurposed into a guild hall? Can we get multi-story homes and these crazy layouts to turn a house into, well, something else entirely? I hope so. And that's the show. So we got to give a round of thanks first to our friends over on Twitch. Thanks for coming by. And hey, make sure that you come by and collect your drop. Another thanks to our awesome patrons for the continued support. And thanks to you, viewer, for making it to the end. You fed the algorithm. So all you got to do now is like the video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.